The heavy oak doors of the Union League Club of Chicago didn't just open, they loomed. I stepped inside, adjusting the collar of my modest charcoal suit, ready to celebrate my son's engagement. But before I could take 2 steps toward the ballroom, a frantic floor manager shoved a stark white apron into my chest. "Late again," he hissed, checking his watch. "Kitchen's to the left. Tray service starts in 5 minutes." My hand hovered over the federal judge credentials in my purse. I was about to correct him, to explain that I wasn't late help but the mother of the groom, when I heard a voice boom from the coat check, a voice I recognized instantly. Victor Caldwell. "It's about standards, Avery," he said, loudly enough for half the lobby to hear. "If Daniel's mother shows up looking like she just scrubbed floors, keep her away from the partners. We can't have the cleaning lady chatting up appellate judges." I froze. I didn't pull out my badge, I didn't clear my throat, I just looked at the apron in my hands and then at the man who thought dignity was determined by net worth. I smiled, cold and small. "Right away, sir," I whispered to the manager, tying the apron strings tight. In my courtroom, silence is a weapon. You let someone talk long enough, comfortable enough, and they will always hang themselves. I decided to apply the same discipline here. I didn't cry, I didn't feel humiliated, I felt the cold, focused clarity of a predator entering tall grass. This wasn't a reception anymore, it was an undercover operation. I walked into the ballroom not as Judge Rachel Monroe, youngest appointment to the 7th Circuit, but as a ghost in a white apron. The transformation was instant. By making myself uninteresting, flat, and obedient, I became invisible. Chicago's elite didn't see a person, they saw furniture that carried champagne, and because I was furniture, they felt safe. I moved through the room with a tray balanced on one hand. The air smelled of expensive perfume and inherited arrogance. Across the room, I locked eyes with my son, Daniel. He stood near the champagne tower, handsome but tense in his tuxedo. His eyes widened when he saw me. He took a step forward, mouth opening to call out. I didn't wave, I didn't smile. I gave him the look, the one that stops an outburst before it begins, a microscopic shake of the head. Daniel hesitated, then stepped back into the shadow of a column. Good, he understood. I circled closer to the Caldwell family. Victor Caldwell was holding court near the windows, scotch in hand, gesturing broadly. He was comfortable. He felt untouchable. He didn't know the room had eyes. I watched his daughter Avery, my son's fiancée. Her dress probably cost more than my first car. She wore it like armor. I watched her snap her fingers at a busboy without breaking conversation. No thank you, no acknowledgement. "We're being generous even considering this," Victor laughed. "Daniel's bright, sure, but he's marrying up, way up. This is a charity case." Heat flashed through my chest and I filed it away as evidence. Discovery phase. I drifted closer and refilled a glass by his elbow. "More scotch, sir?" I asked, flattening my voice, stripping away education and authority. Victor didn't look at my face. He waved me off. "Keep it coming and don't spill it on the leather." "Of course, sir." I walked away as the adrenaline settled into something colder. They thought I was serving drinks. I was serving rope. The doors to the service corridor closed behind me, cutting off the orchestra. It smelled like industrial cleaner and burnt coffee. I leaned against the tile wall and breathed. 30 years ago, I wore a gray jumpsuit and pushed a mop through county courthouses on the South Side. I learned the law by cleaning up after those who practiced it. Victor Caldwell looked at a server and saw failure. I saw hunger. That was my source code. I straightened, adjusted the apron, and went back in. The party was louder now, alcohol peeling away restraint. I watched Avery snap at a young server named Lena over a tray of appetizers, watched her humiliation ripple outward, watched Victor laugh instead of intervene. I knelt beside Lena on the marble floor and wiped spilled champagne with my cloth, whispering reassurance. From that angle, Avery looked tall and cruel. She thought standing made her powerful. She didn't understand that true power protects. I stood, met Avery's eyes, and saw a flicker of unease. Then it vanished. I walked away. The verdict on her character was already in. I traded my tray for a bottle of vintage sparkling wine and moved toward the inner circle, where the partners stood with their backs to the room. This was the real meeting. Victor leaned in, voice low and smug. The Meridian Logistics merger is done. $40 billion, biggest payout this decade. A partner murmured about DOJ scrutiny and a judge assigned to the case, Judge Monroe. Victor laughed. She's soft, family court background, bleeding heart. I poured carefully, not spilling a drop. They talked about burying reports, drowning evidence in paperwork. I stepped back into the shadows, bottle cold against my palm. Underestimation, admission, and they had no idea who was listening. Back into orbit, a satellite tracking the gravitational pull of the Caldwell family ego, I found them near the floor-to-ceiling windows, posing for photos. Avery was the center of gravity, radiating a brittle, blinding kind of charisma. She was flanked by her bridesmaids, girls who looked less like friends and more like accessories chosen specifically not to outshine the bride. I watched Lena again, the same young server, approach the circle with a silver tray of crab cakes. Her hands trembled just slightly. She waited for a pause, respectful, careful. "Hors d'oeuvre, Miss Caldwell?" she asked softly. Avery spun around, irritation flashing across her face. It was almost impressive. "Absolutely not," she snapped, recoiling like Lena had offered her poison. "I told the coordinator no shellfish near the bridal party. Are you trying to kill me, or are you just incompetent?" The music kept playing, but it stopped in my head. Lena stammered an apology, her grip slipping as Avery cut her off. "Go away before you ruin the dress." As Lena turned, she bumped a cocktail table. One champagne flute tipped, splashing harmlessly onto marble nowhere near Avery, but you'd think a bomb went off. "Unbelievable," Victor barked, stepping in. He didn't check on the girl, he didn't help, he laughed. "You see this, Daniel? This is why we pay for premium service. Good help isn't just hard to find, it's extinct." Daniel looked sick. He took a step forward, but Avery pressed a hand to his chest, silencing him. That's when I moved. I didn't look at Victor, I didn't look at Avery. I knelt beside Lena on the cold marble. "It's just water and grapes," I whispered, wiping the floor. "It wipes right up." Her eyes were glassy. "I'm gonna get fired." "You won't," I said quietly. "I promise." I stood and met Avery's gaze. For 1 second, something in my face unsettled her. Maybe she saw the judge. Maybe she saw consequence. "I'll clean, miss," I said flatly. She huffed and turned away. I walked off knowing the trial phase was over. Now came sentencing. I returned to the inner circle. Victor's voice dropped into a conspiratorial purr. "Not just the merger," he bragged. "Avery just secured the summer placement at the Solicitor General's office, DC program." A partner raised an eyebrow. "That's elite. 3 slots a year." I froze. I knew that program. I sat on its oversight committee. Selection was blind, brutal, and merit-based. Avery Caldwell did not belong there. Victor chuckled. "Let's just say the committee remembered how much they enjoyed the law library I funded." "Adjustments?" the partner asked. "Some girl from a state school." Victor waved it off. "Perfect LSAT, real grinder. No pedigree. Her file got misplaced." My blood went cold. I glanced toward the service hall. Lena sat on a milk crate, LSAT prep book open on her lap, margins packed with notes. The pieces snapped together with terrifying clarity. Lena wasn't just a server. She was the girl whose future had been stolen. I set the bottle down hard. Discovery complete. I pulled out my phone and texted a single contact. Senator Thomas Hale, keynote speaker, old law school ally. Code blue in the kitchen. I need a witness. The kitchen doors swung open minutes later. Senator Hale stepped into the room with security. Victor's face lit up as he stepped forward, hand extended. "Senator, Victor Caldwell." Hale walked past him without a glance and stopped in front of me. "Rachel," he said loudly, "why are you wearing an apron?" Silence detonated. Victor's hand hung in the air. Avery's smile collapsed. I untied the apron, folded it neatly, placed it on the tray, and smoothed my suit. "I am Judge Rachel Monroe," I said calmly, "Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, the same court reviewing your $40 billion merger." Victor choked. "Judge, this is a misunderstanding." I stepped closer. "Was it a misunderstanding when you admitted to hiding environmental impact reports? When you described burying evidence in discovery?" "That was privileged," he stammered. "There is no privilege in a catering line," I said. "You confessed to spoliation in front of a federal judge and a U.S. senator." Hale folded his arms. Victor trembled. I turned to Avery. "I'll be pulling your internship file tomorrow." She looked small now. I turned to my son. "Daniel?" He stepped beside me. "Ready to go, Mom?" he asked. "One last thing," I said, turning back to Victor. "You were right to be careful who you talk to. You never know when the cleaning lady holds the gavel." We walked out into silence. I didn't stay for the cake. By the time dessert was plated, Daniel and I were already in a cab, the city lights of downtown Chicago sliding past the windows like a bad dream ending. I kicked off my heels and opened the Notes app on my phone, drafting an affidavit while the adrenaline was still clean and sharp. The fallout didn't come as a scandal, it came as an implosion. Quiet at first, then absolute. 3 months later, the headlines were still running. Meridian Logistics merger blocked. Caldwell and Pierce under federal investigation. Victor Caldwell didn't just lose the case, he lost the firm. When the Bar Association received the transcript of his own words, corroborated by a sitting U.S. senator, his license to practice law evaporated faster than the champagne he used to drink. But the real justice wasn't the collapse of the old guard, it was the redistribution of what they stole. I sat in my chambers one morning, sunlight cutting across the mahogany desk. Daniel sat across from me, lighter somehow, like he'd set down a weight he didn't know he was carrying. He had ended things with Avery that night in the lobby. No shouting, no theatrics, just the ring returned and a quiet goodbye. "She called me," he said, stirring his coffee. "She's working at a boutique now, court-mandated community service, says her feet hurt." I signed a document and allowed myself a small smile. "Pain is an excellent lesson," I said, "if the lesson sticks." He hesitated. "And the internship?" I opened the top drawer of my desk and pulled out a fresh file. That was the easiest ruling I've ever made. My mind drifted to the previous week. I had tracked down Lena at a public library, the same LSAT book open in front of her, pages worn thin for hope and repetition. When I handed her the acceptance letter, the one that should have been hers all along, she didn't scream or jump. She just cried, silent and shaking, the way people do when they've been invisible for so long they forget what it feels like to be seen. She starts Monday. I stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. Towers of glass and steel rose like monuments to money and ego. But down below, the real city moved. The servers, the janitors, the drivers, the people no one looks at but everyone depends on. At home, the folded white apron hangs in my closet, right beside my judicial robes. Different uniforms, same purpose. Truth. Victor Caldwell thought power was about who you could command. He forgot that real power is about who you protect. "Justice is blind," I said softly, resting my hand on the gavel. "But she isn't deaf. And she hears everything." Most people scroll past stories like this. The ones who subscribe are the ones trying to change something inside themselves. If this made you stop scrolling, subscribe and share this with someone who still believes character matters.